Now it's time for On Point, where we speak to experts to delve deeper into the biggest news stories in the spotlight right now. Numerous experts say 2022 will be dominated by global efforts to tackle inflation. This is emerging as a serious problem due to the pandemic. However, many experts paint a rosier picture, saying they expect global economic growth to be reasonably strong, especially compared to the last couple of years.
Nevertheless, the emergence of new variants of the COVID-19 remains a continual uncertainty heading into the new year. So for more on the challenges facing the global economy as well as the potential bright spots, we connect to Professor Oh Joon-seok of Sookmyung University of Business. Professor, good morning.
Morning.
So I must ask, if you had to pick three of the biggest threats of for the economy this year, what would it be?
Number one would be the likelihood of stagflation, high inflation with stagnant economic growth. Though it is widely known, printing money is just a working shadow. Merely whitewashing tainted economic situation, there has been no other option to hold on business sentiment under the prolonged COVID-19. Inflation fears, as a result, may be peaking with graver concerns that central banks may stall the recovery by acting too quickly and consecutively to raise interest rate from the start of this year. Secondly, it seems clear supply chain bottleneck would be wall of obstruction in a way that may increase production costs and energy costs altogether. Shipping snarls along with shortage of shipping containers and a steep rebound in demand have left producers scampering for components and raw materials. For the last, in the middle of such regional integration as RCEP, CPTPP, and IPEF, geopolitical tension will confirm the substance of economic risk, amplifying uncertainties this year. Washington has warned Moscow against invading Ukraine amid a massive Russian troop buildup on the Ukrainian border. The U.S. and the European allies are weighing in more economic sanctions against Russia, including stopping the controversial Nord Stream 2 gas pipeline should it invade its neighbor. If the U.S. and Europe hold the Nord Stream 2 pipeline, that could trigger a global energy crisis. In addition, what about the U.S.-China relation? Already had sparked for a trade war, have also been tense over Taiwan, with Washington warning Beijing against unilaterally changing the status quo over the island territory. Geopolitical tensions will reverberate from the start to the end of this year.
Okay, very comprehensive answer there, Professor. We appreciate that. Now, if COVID-19 is going to have a prolonged impact, how much damage do you think that is going to do to economies around the world? And financially speaking, just how much longer can countries endure this situation?
COVID variant made global financial and commodity market crash altogether. According to IMF projection, when COVID-19 were to have a prolonged impact into the medium term, it could reduce global GDP by a cumulative $5.3 trillion over the next 5 years. European economy is on track to recover to pre-pandemic levels by the end of this year, and is poised for a 4.6% of GDP growth in 2022. What about China? The primary engine for global growth will face highly transmissible variant leading to a larger break and require more severe lockdown. That means greater economic disruption and lower consumptions than expected will stay till the end of this year. Developing countries will be hit hardest, and political incumbents will bear the brunt of political anger. A new outbreak will slow economic growth in emerging markets and leave government with heavier debt. COVID-19 will continue to drive political and economic instability accordingly. In brief, in the developing world, the end is near, while it remains far from the end in other areas. The pandemic will likely become endemic for advanced economies in the first half of this year. Yet it is expected that even in the developed world, the economic hangover from the pandemic will endure with disrupted supply chain and persistent inflation, at least by the end of this year.
All right. Then, Professor, I must ask, supply chain disruptions played a massive role in stalling global recovery last year. What about this year? Do you think it would continue?
Yes, I'm afraid so, because given the recurrent threat of COVID-19, as long as the supply chain might not be resolved in 2022. Beyond the current supply chain disturbance, there are deeper issues of supply chain reformation that must be addressed by companies in every industry from the basic. They will recalculate where to source and produce and how to procure and distribute around the world. The supply problems begin with the outbreak of the pandemic when production in China was shut down. As a result, some companies started shifting production region from China to Vietnam and to Indonesia. Orderly exit and new entry plan will start over the next years. Before the pandemic, global value chain strategy has been designed for maximizing efficiency only, not to count on the minimizing exposure to risk. Now it's different. Rethinking global supply chain, the vision's plot thickens with a grand reconfiguration and reformation among allied supply chain by way of cross-border M&A or international project financing. One thing remains clear, these transformation will be implemented at the sacrifice of max efficiency and sales. This means solutions for anti-supply bottleneck now and in the future can hurt the economy by decreasing the proper level of supply and thereby escalating the cost of goods soaring global consumer prices overall.
And finally, before we let you go, we don't want to end on too much of a gloomy note. Do you have any forecasts for what might be the positive sparks this year in terms of the global economy?
First of all, recognizing the need for AI ethics, we have seen an upcoming vision of digital transformation. AI applications from facial recognition to employment screening are increasingly being deployed across industries and will become ubiquitous during this decade. Yet, as for AI ethics, quite recently raised by the United States, EU, Japan, and China, common ethical values have not been put into operation. Global AI norms will become a momentum of an AI industry. Secondly, the importance of tech sovereignty. The EU is beginning to define and to discuss the concept of tech sovereignty as a means of making their union more competitive. As this regulatory approach would rein in U.S. companies and force to change the business model, Biden administration should prioritize efforts to find common ground with the EU on the digital matters, including data protection and privacy safety systematically. Finally, return of Asian emerging market. Morgan Stanley report Asian emerging market growth will remain strong with GDP growth of 4.9% for all emerging markets. Though slow growth in Brazil and Russia drag down the average, Korea has taken New Southern policy for 4 years, reinforcing economic ties and partnership with these Asian countries. This outlook will be a materialization of New Southern policy and economic booster for Korea. GDP growth in Asia region will outperform at 5.7%. India and Indonesia rebounding strongly, helped by business-friendly structural reformation, strong capital investment, and rising vaccination rates. They cast a silver lining.
All right. Thank you so much, Professor Oh. We'll talk to you again soon.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you.